goods chapter of the free trade agreement. Now we are going to talk about the trading services chapter, the economic cooperation chapter, and the investment chapter. The panel sessions have accordingly been lined up. To begin with, ladies and gentlemen, Renminbi is being touted as the growing currency for trade in the world. It is one of the main currencies in trade finance, and it is gaining momentum. The first part of the panel, chaired by the first Deputy Governor, will accordingly discuss about the role and aspirations of Mauritius to become a Renminbi clearing hub and trading center. Secondly, when we talk about market access in trading services, it is axiomatic that we talk about the modes of supply. Accordingly, through a presentation and a panel discussion on spotlight in services, we will dissect the 4 modes of supply when it comes to trading services. Thirdly, we are talking about Mauritius being the springboard for investment between China and Africa. Therefore, we shall talk about the trilateral axis and the advantages of Mauritius being that hub when it comes to cross-border movement of capital. And then lastly, and very importantly, we shall talk about trade finance, because trade finance invariably has a key role in enhancing trading services and trading goods. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we shall begin by a statement from the Governor of the Central Bank. He's our next speaker. Mr. Seegolam was appointed as Governor of the Bank of Mauritius on the 1st of March 2020 by the President of the Republic of Mauritius upon recommendation by the Prime Minister. Prior to his appointment as Governor of the Central Bank, he was the Chief Executive of the Financial Services Commission, where he spearheaded a number of national initiatives regarding the development and regulation of financial services. His innovation-driven culture essentially meant that during his tenure at the Financial Services Commission, Mr. Seegolam was at the forefront of the establishment of the National Regulatory License Committee for fintech projects in Mauritius, the commissioning of the blueprint for the next 10 years' growth for the financial services sector, and very importantly, the setting up of the FSC Regional Center of Excellence, which is an initiative that the FSC did together with the OECD, aiming at furthering capacity building and research in the fields of financial services, competition, digital finance, amongst others. Prior to that, Mr. Seegolam launched and ran the Financial Services Promotion Agency, and I had the privilege of being a team member of the FSPA. Governor, it is an honor for me to submit this stage to you. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, Fahaz. Mr. Amnyal, the chairperson of the Economic Development Board, Mr. Soormally, the vice chairperson of the Economic Development Board, dear colleagues, dear friends, I see a number of familiar faces. I see many CEOs of banks also present with us here today. A very good morning to all of you, all protocols observed. I must say that I'm very pleased to be with you here today, this morning, more so because we are discussing on the opening of a whole new chapter for our economy. My team has prepared a very lengthy speech for me, but I will most probably share a few thoughts with you in terms of how I see things unfolding going forward, and more importantly, how I think key enablers that would be required for this FTA to be able to reach its maximum potential. We are indeed at a time where globally all countries are having to deal with what we all know we're facing today. A sanitary condition that has led many countries into major economic difficulties. And at such a point in time, what is becoming more and more pressing is for all countries to be able to rethink their economic model. And this economic restructuring is something that I personally see this very FTA becoming a major enabler for our economic rethinking of our economic structure. I've shared it on a number of panels before, shared it in a number of forums also, that what is most important for Mauritius today is to first consolidate what we already have, but while consolidating what we already have, is to build on that for us to be able to achieve and secure our future. It is in this very spirit that you would see that we have been rolling out a number of measures at the level of the Bank of Mauritius over the last year in view of supporting the economy in this very important economic trajectory that we are on. Through the number of preferential market access agreements that have been signed since the beginning of this year, ranging from the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, going through the SECPA with the UK, and with the China Free Trade Agreement, I think we are now seeing much clearer how our economy can tap into these opportunities that were not yet present. Economic diversification would be crucial in our way forward. And through such agreements, we will be able to open new opportunities and doors that will allow Mauritius to grow to its potential. But what is also important to note is, while we're doing this, it's very important for our enablers to be in place so that that can help us to reach our potential. Well, when I look at the FTA precisely, the four pillars, as I call it, the pillar on trade of goods, the pillar on trade of services, the pillar on investment, and the pillar on economic cooperation. These four pillars are pillars that can be regrouped into two main corridors. What I normally call the corridor of trade in goods and services, and secondly, the corridor of the movement of capital. I will spend the next few minutes basically sharing my views with you on these two essential corridors that we're building. The corridor on movement of goods and services is a critical one. It's a critical one because, as I just shared with you, it is through these movements of goods and services that we can embark on new opportunities that can be created in our economy. It is through the movement of goods and services that we can open new chapters for our economy, and it is through these new trade in goods and services that we can help address the situation of our balance of payments. We all know how all countries around the world are now having to tackle with different situations, different scenarios in terms of dealing with their balance of payments. And here also in Mauritius, we are faced with situations where we've been called upon to rethink and take steps that can help us deal with our balance of payments better going forward. While creating these new opportunities, it is evident that we will be attracting more operators to set up base here in Mauritius, to start production lines in new goods that would be serving the purposes of markets like China. When I look at the content of the FTA, more than 7,500 products down. This is an immense opportunity. More than 100 services that are concerned. Again, an immense opportunity for all of us to be able to make the maximum out of it and to be able to redynamize our entire trading sector altogether. It is essential, though, when we're thinking about this, that we have the necessary support mechanism. And here I'd like to go back around a couple of years in time, when we were thinking about the blueprint for our financial services sector. Those of you who are aware of the content of the blueprint would very much connect to what I'm saying. In the blueprint, one of the major focus was on enhancing the position of Mauritius as a trading hub. And when I say trading hub, it evidently means that trade finance becomes an important component of our trading hub. We had put a lot of emphasis on developing Mauritius as a regional treasury center. We had put a lot of emphasis on developing Mauritius as a corporate finance destination. The new chapters that are going to be spelled out for our country would be spelled out with the growing activities that we can see in trade finance and all related activities. And here, I would like to share with you that at the level of the Bank of Mauritius, we're giving an important focus on developing the entire merchant banking segment of activities in our country. That goes in line with the rethinking of our economic model. Should banks not accompany this process, we would not be able to achieve the potential. And this is where it is important for you as future operators, for our Chinese friends who may be coming to set up shop here in Mauritius, for other investors who would be coming to set up shop in Mauritius to be able to explore and get the benefit out of these FTAs. It would be important for the banking world to accompany these operators as we go along. Hence, trade finance becomes an essential component. Certainly, I will not dwell into the technicalities of it because I understand that you've got dedicated panels which will be discussing around all these aspects throughout today's workshop. But I can reassure you, and I can reiterate to all of you, that at the level of the Bank of Mauritius, we're leaving no stone unturned in terms of ensuring that we have the necessary setup for Mauritius to excel as a trade finance hub. Our objective is, over the next couple of years, to start forging Mauritius as becoming the reference brand when it comes to merchant banking activities and trade finance activities in this part of the world. And here my call to all bankers who are with us here today and to those who are not present here also would be that we need to be able to rethink our model. We need to be able to look at the future together in this journey that we have all embarked on. Linked with this new economic restructuring that we are all going to live in the next couple of years, I think it is essential that I also share with you that at the level of the Bank of Mauritius, we have created, as you all are aware, the Mauritius Investment Corporation. The MIC has been put in place, certainly with the objective of accompanying those firms that are impacted as a result of the pandemic. But more importantly, it has also been put in place as an essential tool in ensuring our future financial stability. It has been put in place as an essential tool to be able to invest in the future generations of Mauritius, and it has been put in place to be able to create what we're calling the future Mauritius. What this means is that the MIC would remain available, I'm sure, through its office to be able to accompany essential investors and new operators which are looking at establishing operations in Mauritius in view of exploring the possibilities that are present under the FTA as well. This brings me to the second corridor that I was speaking to you all about. And the second corridor has to do with the movement of capital. On one side, you've got the movement of goods and services. On the other side, you've got the movement of capital. Now, when you look at the role that Mauritius has been playing as an international financial center over the years, it is evident that over the next few years, with the opening of China more now as an essential market for us, we will be able to see quite a lot more of movement when it comes to cross-border investments. And here again, banks have an essential role to play in accompanying investors who are looking at further exploring the Mauritian jurisdiction in their quest for new opportunities and new markets. I would therefore again make an appeal to all the banks here that we come together and we are able to accompany all our investors in this strategy that we have already spelled out in view of making Mauritius further stronger as an international financial center that has proven itself over the years. Linked with this is also the concept that many of you would be dwelling on in the next couple of minutes now, on the role of Mauritius as a clearing and settlement center for RMB. This, again, is an essential component that we've been reflecting on for many years now. The potential is huge for Mauritius to be developed as an RMB clearing and settlement center. When you look at the figures of trade between Africa and China and vice versa, when you look at the movement of capital that is already happening, you would see that there is a role for Mauritius to be able to play as the center, the hub for RMB-linked activities. It is in this very respect that at the level of the Bank of Mauritius, we have already started engaging with the concerned Chinese authorities in mainland China in view of further discussing how to be able to work very closely together so that we can provide the necessary platform for Mauritius to further develop as an RMB clearing center. I'm pleased to announce here that we now have a committee, a standing committee, that regroups representatives of the Bank of Mauritius, that regroups representatives of the People's Bank of China, also being the central bank in China, and we are already coordinating efforts in view of spelling out the next way forward and further accompanying Mauritius in this important trajectory of becoming the RMB center. I think it is also essential as we go through this journey that we see more Chinese operators setting up shop in Mauritius. And here, my call to His Excellency, the Ambassador of People's Republic of China, to work very closely with us in these new objectives that we want to achieve. We already have the Bank of China operating in Mauritius, and as governor of the Bank of Mauritius, I would be very keen to see more operators and more banks from China showing interest in Mauritius so that we can further achieve what we want to achieve in a much quicker manner. I can reassure all of you that at the level of the Bank of Mauritius, we will give all necessary support in accompanying all investors over the next few years in achieving the full potential that the free trade agreement has spelled out for our country. I will certainly not be too long here because I understand that we're already running late on schedule today. And I will leave you in the good hands of my first Deputy Governor, who would be steering the next panel discussion on the RMB-linked activities in Mauritius, which is what I understand correctly. So with these words, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all successful deliberations in today's exercise. And I really hope that in a couple of years, we will be able to stand here or in another venue again and be able to speak about figures that would be speaking for themselves in terms of quantifying the results of this very important agreement that has been signed and that has further bonded and cemented our long-established and time-tested relations between China and Mauritius. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Governor, for this thought-provoking statement. You alluded to it already. May I call upon the panelists to join? Ladies and gentlemen, so we shall begin with the first panel session of today. What does it take for Mauritius to become that Renminbi clearing hub? What is the commercial viability of Mauritius becoming that hub? How do we connect the dots when it comes to policy considerations, when it comes to regulations, when it comes to cooperation? This panel, ladies and gentlemen, will be moderated by the first Deputy Governor, Mr. Kona Yerukunondu. Mr. Kona was appointed with effect of the 24th of February of this year as the first Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Mauritius, and on the 12th of May 2020 as the chairman of the Financial Services Commission. Prior to that, for those who may not know, Mr. Kona was the first ombudsperson for financial services in Mauritius. He is a seasoned banker. He joined the Bank of Mauritius in 1977, and he has acquired expertise in critical areas ranging from central bank administration to the modernization of the country's banking and financial services framework. He has been an ardent defender, and I know personally, of the image and repute of the Mauritius jurisdiction, has been a speaker in a number of high-level fora. Mr. Yerukunondu read law at the University of London, is a sworn-in barrister, and holds qualifications from the Institute of Statisticians. FDG, it is an honor for you to lead the panel. Thank you.
With this warm and generous introduction for us, I can only say thank you. But I think you've got the wrong iron. Well, there are two things I'm doing for the first time today. One, it's wearing the mic this way. And second, it's hearing myself read. Both are amazing. Let me now, in turn, introduce to you my fellow panelists. I have, on my far left, Mr. Lianhong, CEO of the Bank of China, Mauritius. I think he deserves. Mr. Lianhong has had a career spanning over 27 years with the Bank of China Group, during which time he held senior leadership positions, in particular head of teamwork of corporate banking at BOC headquarters, head of preparatory group for Bank of China, Cuba, deputy CEO of Bank of China, Mexico. He now occupies the post of CEO and director of Bank of China, Mauritius. So banking is no secret to him. On my immediate left is Mr. Issa Soormally. I have the honor of saying that he was second deputy governor of the Bank of Mauritius before. He is now the managing director of Tukang Corporate Services. He is also vice chairman of the EDB. Those who are organizing this very function today, he is the vice chairman of that. Issa is a fellow member of the MIUD and is a holder of a degree in banking and finance. He is a seasoned commercial banker and regulator. He had various positions with local as well as international organizations. Intensive experience in international banking, with a track record in Réunion, France, Luxembourg, Kenya, Dubai, and South Africa. Issa has also been instrumental in setting up a branch of the Al Salam Bank in Bahrain, in the Republic of Bahrain, in the Republic of Seychelles. He was a participant and speaker representing Mauritius at various international financial conferences and events. Impressive indeed. So I have on my right Mr. Mathieu Mandeng. Mr. Mathieu Mandeng is currently the CEO of the Standard Chartered Bank Mauritius. He also chairs the board of 4 Standard Chartered Bank private equity funds, investing in India, China, Nigeria, Botswana, Hong Kong, and Mauritius. Mr. Mandeng serves as executive director of Standard Chartered Mauritius and non-executive director of Cameroon and Côte d'Ivoire, where he chairs the Audit and Risk Committee. He is also member of the Economic Development Board of Mauritius, director of Mauritius Finance, and a member of the Economic Committee of Business Mauritius. Prior to his appointment in Mauritius, in 2015, Mathieu is seasoned professional, has more than 20 years experience in banking. So Mr. Mandeng is everywhere. Finally, to my far right, Mr. Assad Abdullatiff. Assad brings over 20 years of experience in corporate law and governance, tax planning and structuring, fund formation and administration, company secretarial, trust, and estate planning. Beginning his career at Standard Bank Trust Company, Assad had held several senior positions in various international financial services companies in Mauritius. Prior to his appointment as managing director at Axis, Assad was assistant director at the Board of Investment. Oh, I never knew that. Where he headed the financial services cluster and was also responsible for the promotion of Mauritius as an IFC. Assad has made a name in the global sector. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can see we have distinguished panelists. A reason for you to shoot your questions at the end. And I just hope you're not scared of questions. Great. So, before we start the panel discussions, I'm going to say a few words just to set the stage for the oncoming discussions that will be held. Let's talk about food. Look around yourself. How many Chinese restaurants are there in Mauritius? Many. Chinese food has now become Mauritian food. I'm not going to compare. My son is a fan of Liverpool and boiled noodles. Yesterday he was telling me that we can now have boiled noodles with lobster. The way to a man's heart, they say, is through his stomach. Mr. Minister Siratan this morning was talking about Chinatown. There are Chinatowns all over the world. Melbourne, Toronto, London, Lima, Amsterdam, Vancouver, and the USA. We have a Chinatown in Mauritius also. According to CNN, there is a Chinatown in every major city in the world. Such is the huge footprint of Chinese people who have left their motherland for a life elsewhere. Malaysia, ladies and gentlemen, Singapore. If you go to Singapore and you've not been to Chinatown, it's as if you've not been to Singapore. The other day, on the occasion of the Spring Festival here in Mauritius, I heard the Chinese priest saying on the television that the Chinese have helped the economy by bringing food to all nooks and corners of the country all the time. This is very much true. In my childhood, my neighbor was a Chinese who owned a shop. And even during closing hours, we could get served through the window. Counting on the spike abacus, I learned it from them. Firecrackers. You hear firecrackers during the Spring Festival, but don't forget, for the same reason, you hear it on the 31st of December of each year. All this to bring you to this, ladies and gentlemen, in a span, just to show you the progress which has been made by China. In a span of 3 decades, China has risen to become the second economy in the world after the United States. I will now go to the crux of the subject, the Renminbi. The Renminbi is the currency of the Republic of China, as you all know. If you go to a bank and you want to buy dollars, you can exchange your rupee for dollars. Subject to due diligence, of course, because I know there are many bankers here. It is freely tradable. But if you want to exchange your rupee for renminbi, you won't get it. The reason is that it is not tradable. So therefore, if you want to pay for import or export of goods to China, your rupee has to be converted into a currency in which the renminbi is convertible, and the currency is most probably the US dollar or any other currency which can be converted into the renminbi. It is most desirable that transactions between the Mauritian rupee and the renminbi be done directly. For this to happen, there must be an agreement between the Central Bank of Mauritius and the People's Republic Bank of China. One way of doing this is by entering into bilateral swap agreements with the People's Bank of China. In this way, the Central Bank of Mauritius will have access to renminbi liquidity for short periods of time at relatively low rates of interest in return for its own currency as collateral or some other currency. Between 2009 and January 2020, the People's Bank of China has entered into swap agreements with 41 countries, out of which South Africa, Nigeria, Morocco, and Egypt in Africa. A bilateral swap agreement is considered most essential. This would give confidence to the market that there is renminbi liquidity to facilitate renminbi flows, and that it would contribute to trade facilitation. It would also remove the requirement that both sides, the requirement for both sides to make a conversion into a third currency. Thus, invoicing in renminbi would improve pricing transparency for customers and reduce currency risk for trading partners. It is important for you to know that the Bank of Mauritius is currently discussing with the People's Bank of China for such a swap. This will allow importers and exporters to have access to renminbi liquidity through their commercial banks for the conduct of their transactions. This swap arrangement can be pushed a bit further by having a renminbi clearing house in Mauritius. This has benefits for both countries. It will allow Mauritius to enhance its jurisdiction as an international financial center and increase the visibility of Mauritius globally. On the other hand, a renminbi clearing and settlement center in Mauritius would promote the growth of renminbi activity in the country and would potentially help to spur regional demand for renminbi products and services in a context where China is rapidly opening its capital markets to offshore investors. It could also attract investment flows through Mauritius between China and Africa. Mauritius aims to position itself as a gateway between China and Africa for trade and services. It is already considered as an investment hub for Africa and can help support Chinese companies in investing in Africa because of its friendly regulation and ease of doing business. It may be noted that China has become Africa's largest trade partner, and Africa is one of China's major import sources and largest investment destination. The deepening trade relationship between China and Africa clearly points to a longer-term story in which the renminbi will play a more strategic role in facilitating cross-border trade and investment. The necessary infrastructure, process, and connectivity already exist to support the setting up of a regional renminbi clearing and settlement platform. In this context, it may be appropriate to say that the BOM, at the Bank of Mauritius, is actively participating in regional cross-border payment projects such as the SADC integrated regional electronic system, settlement system known as the CIRES, and the COMESA regional payment and settlement system, the REPS. The BOM hosts and operates the REPS and acts as a settlement bank for the region. US dollar and euro accounts have already been opened for 10 COMESA central banks, and the REPS has a potential to reach 19 COMESA member states. The renminbi would be part of that. I will stop here, ladies and gentlemen. I will leave the opportunity for my friends also to say a few things. Let me start with a question to Mr. Issa Soormally. Back in 2014, Mr. Soormally, there were discussions about Mauritius becoming Africa's renminbi trading hub. You were the second deputy governor of the bank. Can you put this in a historical perspective? Let the people know.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to address you today. If you allow me, Governor, His Excellency, Chairman, I will be 3 seconds irrelevant to this topic, that just to put in context for non-bankers. What does renminbi definition means? Renminbi definition, when I was asked to prepare the topic, I said, RMB, I need to check. So I went to the Oxford Dictionary, and it says it's the people currency. And the people's currency consists of the yuan, the jiao, the fen, the kwai, and the mao. Very interesting definition if you go to Wikipedia. And I do recommend all of you to go and check. When you look at the valuation of the renminbi and the valuation attached by the People's Bank of China, and this is very interesting, to see that the IMF accepted in its special basket in 2016 the renminbi as a special reserve. And this is a very strategic initiative where the renminbi started its journey freely across the world. So back, like the chairman was saying, in 2014, there was a discussion at the central bank, and it's where it started about, do we start looking at this currency as a major currency for the world and for Mauritius. And it was agreed during a forum called the Africa First Renminbi Trading Hub that was held at the central bank. And at that time, I do remember that the embassy of the Chinese embassy offered the 40 staff to go on the training to speak Mandarin and to learn Mandarin. And I believe I saw some of the colleagues at the central bank today, and that kick-started the opportunity and the adventure for Renminbi as a clearing hub. There was agreement signed, discussions were held, and it was focused at that time by specialists that in a decade, the volume of business would go from $200 billion and double to $400 billion. If you look at the numbers, right, by McKinsey and other surveys, you will see it has tripled.
So it went beyond your expectation, the expectation.
Worldwide, it has gone beyond expectation. Having said, there is an opportunity for Renminbi-dominated transaction in Africa. And in this respect, Mauritius was seen as a gateway to Africa to become the first RMB hub in Africa. With what is being signed by the FTA, again in 2019 by our Prime Minister, we saw that Mauritius is still playing a vital role, and we are the first African country to be chosen. So we were always right. The Central Bank of Mauritius was on the right path. The reason why Mauritius could
we are still.
We will and will be definitely under the guidance of the team and the governor.
The governor and the guidance under the able guidance of the governor.
Definitely. And the FDG and SDG. So the RMB Trading Hub is becoming an important platform globally. And Mauritius needs to seize that opportunity to become at par with major trading centers like Hong Kong, Singapore, Frankfurt, and London. These jurisdictions have been providing RMB settling and clearing very efficiently. And I'm sure that we already are in that pathway. To put matters in context, the Mauritius Hub will definitely make use of the Renminbi in Africa trade, and this will make commerce and investment easier for Mauritius and for the financial institution. The African firms doing business in China using Renminbi would be more efficient than using a currency of an unrelated country, typically the US dollar. Yeah. That's what you were talking. Yeah. And it will minimize also the foreign exchange trading risk. At that time, if you put it in context, there was a big question mark. And that is good for you to know. They say we have all importers, but we don't have exporters. How will we match the legs? For you to understand, it's like you have in the balance sheet, the right side and the left side. Actually, the left side was only import. We didn't have any export. And with the FTA, I believe that the volume will increase, and that will make it more consistent. We already have a platform for exchange at the central bank. The bank has been in advanced discussion under your aegis, and I believe that the platform is already there. Because like we have Bank of China, who came in 2016, following different discussion with the People's Bank, and also you have HSBC playing a major role, and Standard Chartered. MCB, who came afterwards to complete that set of Renminbi clearing platform. They're already trading in Renminbi, and there has been a lot of advertisement on the press to encourage, let's say, importers or exporters to trade through the RMB. So in order to enhance substance and the product spectrum, we also have in the budget speech 2016, 2017, in the Economic Cooperation, Chapter 12, 12.8 section, where the government has also taken the step to address the right framework. because Mauritius being, by its position, a very stable social, political, and have the business climate. So the government has put in place, with the central bank, the different framework to encourage these, and that was the fruition of the signature in 2019, that we had the framework, the central bank was ready, the state of readiness for our economy was right. Today, we are very proud that we can say that Mauritius is in a state that we are ready to go to Africa, and with the FTA that will give us an extra edge. Thank you.
Mathieu, would you wish to add anything on this?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. The First Deputy Governor has introduced Mathieu Mandeng as a speaker, but maybe it's important that just for 1 second, I share with the audience news about Standard Chartered Bank. For those who only know Standard Chartered as the main sponsor of Liverpool, it's important that you understand that Standard Chartered Bank have actually got a unique selling proposition of being the only global bank bullish on the African
It
continent.
appears that you're marketing your bank.
No. It's just you said the same. Bullish on the African continent with the presence in Mauritius. Indeed, we are in China big time. That's important. We are here and we are in Africa. Now, when we talk about Renminbi, setting notions of Renminbi hub, it goes back to the journey on Renminbi globalization that China has been driving over the past 10 years, put it that way, with policies, relaxations. But
the question is about, to talk about the Renminbi in a historical perspective, no? Don't use your canons, all your canons now.
No, I'm talking about the historical.
Okay.
I'm giving the historical and what China is doing. Okay? So, as I was saying, China has been driving the Renminbi internalization, globalization, through policy relaxation, but to be honest, the adoption of Renminbi as the trading currency has not been that successful. It has grown, has not been that successful until last year. That's very important. If you check the statistics, obviously, Renminbi represents today 2.42% of traded currency globally, the 5th most traded currency. But as I said, from last year, we've observed a shift, a significant shift, right? From two fundamental fronts. Number one, China has turbocharged the implementation of new policies and regulations to actually drive the adoption of Renminbi by Chinese SOEs and POEs. That is one thing that we've observed, we've seen. The other push is China actually asking Chinese SOEs and POEs to adopt Renminbi for their international operations. And we've seen those companies talking to us, Standard Chartered, in Hong Kong, asking us to help them actually denominate their transactions, their trade transactions in Renminbi. And as a consequence, we're seeing SOEs being mandated by the government of China to make sure that within the next 2 to 3 years, they convert the denomination of their transaction in Renminbi. Adversely, foreign companies that are dealing with Chinese companies, SOEs or POEs, have asked to change the currency of settlement to Renminbi. So this gives a fundamental, I would say, platform and opportunity for obviously Renminbi internationalization and Mauritius, as we said, at that famous Renminbi clearing hub. And this is coming at a very appropriate time because for those who have been around long enough, you know that back in 2016, we brought Standard Chartered, we brought our Renminbi internationalization specialist, a lady by the name of Camille Ling, who came from Hong Kong. Because by the way, you need to know that Hong Kong is the largest renminbi clearing hub globally. And Standard Chartered is the biggest liquidity provider of renminbi in Hong Kong. So we brought Mandeng here. In fact, we made a presentation at Central Bank. At that point in time, the governor was leading the Financial Services Promotion Agency. And we were ready to turbocharge that engagement. So we're very happy to see today, as Issa have said, that one particular aspect that was missing, which was the volume, the trade. Because for you to be able to really, I would say, turbocharge the usage of a currency, you need a volume. The volume wasn't there. So we expect that with this FTA, the trade volume will come as a foundation.
If I leave you like this, Mathieu, you'll exhaust all the time.
I'll stop there. I'll stop there.
So I asked another question to Issa. What is your intake, Issa, for an appetite for renminbi trading by banks in Mauritius?
Chair, I think Mauritius can boast that we have one of the most sophisticated banking systems as an island country. And the Mauritian banking industry offers a wide range of services, ranging from individual, corporate, multinational, as well as private clients. So the landscape is set and has evolved through time from traditional banking facilities to card-based payment services, internet banking, custodian services, and Mauritius today can boast itself as a platform internationally and locally for cross-border activities. As China's share of global trade and investment will grow, the relative importance of renminbi as an international currency will definitely gain more pace. And Africa, for instance, we can note that China's yuan has attracted more and more attention due to its advantages in facilitating China-Africa trade and investment. Officials of central banks and finance ministries from a member of African countries have suggested they are considering, and they have already done it, the Chinese yuan as a reserve currency and expanding its use across the whole continent. Rwanda, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Botswana are already a step. Mauritius is already in that field also, and they are using the settlement currency. Coming back to Mauritius, I believe that with the FTA that the government has set up and the different panels and also the translation of the FTA into business substance will definitely be something very pivotal for renminbi clearing hub. And this is why the future will depend on how we take this forward and how hungry we are to make it work together with all the international agreements that we are already in place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I have now substantive questions for you, Mathieu. Do you think that China should be more aggressive in internationalizing the RMB?
Actually, China is doing a lot. I can even say is aggressively driving the adoption of the renminbi as a leading currency, but it's probably not just known. I mean, a lot is happening in China which is not known, and that's why platforms such as this one are useful for precisely to share those information, to share what is happening. As I said early on, what China is really aggressively driving policy change, policy relaxations, regulations to push the adoption of renminbi. It's happening in China. That's number one. China is aggressively, I'm repeating myself, but it's important, aggressively pushing the SOEs and the POEs, sovereign-owned entities, enterprises, and private-owned enterprises in China to adopt the renminbi. Now, I must say that that push was sort of triggered by the geopolitical dynamics, to say the least. You will understand what I mean, right? Where there are SOEs and POEs that are telling us that they are afraid that, because of potential economic sanctions, they could be cut off from the USD and their business come to halt. And therefore, they're actually following that movement, which is driven by the government of China, to make sure that renminbi is adopted for their financing, for their liquidity, for their settlement. So this is happening, it's actually happening. And we've seen that firsthand, Standard Chartered, whether in Hong Kong, because of, as I said, Hong Kong is the number one renminbi clearing hub globally, and we happen to be the number one liquidity provider. So to your question, whether China can do more, you can always do more, of course. If you only control, represent 2.42% of the global currency traded, you can do more. But a lot is happening, and that has to be known. And I'm saying that companies that are dealing already with some SOEs and POEs in China, actually for foreign currencies, are forced to convert their transaction into renminbi. So to your question, China is doing already a lot. They can do more. But it's already important for players to know what is happening in that space.
So Mathieu, how do you think that emerging markets benefit from the internalization of the yuan?
That is the transaction of renminbi. It's a very, very important question. It might be slightly long to explain this.
Okay, please.
Because you cannot decouple the renminbi internalization from the globalization and the benefit I will derive from both. At Standard Chartered, I mean, we think that the period of unbridled globalization, which has characterized the early part of the last decade, basically has seen fundamentally two things. Number one, we saw a strong growth rate. Number two, a lot of good was done to a subset portion of the population. That's very important. I will land into your question, but listen to me carefully, please. The problem is that why this sort of unbridled globalization has done good to a subset of the population, it has also left another subset of the population unattended. And as a consequence, there is the political need to go back to that sort of unbridled globalization is no more there. And, the idea that what is good for a small proportion of the population somewhere in the globe is better than what would be good for a bigger proportion of the population in some other space in the globe, particularly in China, it cannot stand anymore. So what we're seeing then, the question is, China actually, will China or should China be a globalizer at the global scale, or a globalizer as a regional scale, as a big regional scale? And this is where what we call the China sort of globalization ecosystem, known as the China sphere, come into play. And that China globalization ecosystem, also known as China sphere, ranks from Nigeria, Ghana, Zambia, Kenya, to Taiwan, Japan, the islands in the Pacific Ocean, even Australia. That is the China sphere. And what we're seeing in that China sphere actually is sort of restructuring, redynamization of the, let's say, the value chain and the wealth creation, where you have Chinese, obviously, manufacturing to Vietnam, to Korea, to India, to Thailand. Now, if you want to keep fueling the trade and investment within that China sphere and between that China sphere and the rest of the world, you need to turbocharge the renminbi. You need to turbocharge the renminbi as a way of raising capital, as a way of pushing the liquidity, as a way of trading and creating wealth and prosperity. And we've seen that happening. So this is where renminbi internalization, renminbi globalization, as a way to fuel that wealth creation, that prosperity that China has driven with its population, as we've seen, by taking 800 million people out of poverty in 40 years, to continue that exercise within what we call the China sphere. That is what we're seeing happening. That will be the benefit for the emerging market. That will be the benefit for developing countries by the internalization of the renminbi.
That was insightful, Mathieu. Indeed. I will now pass on to my friend Assad. So the question to you is, do you think that China... No, the question is, how is the Mauritius International Financial Center poised to operate as a renminbi hub for Africa? This is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's a good transition from what Mathieu has been explaining just now. Although I have to be honest, the challenge of being amongst the last to speak in such an eminent panel is everything has already been said. So there's not much more to say, although what I'll try to do is I'll try to look at it more from a strategic perspective and try to connect the dots and bring everything together. The question is whether Mauritius can be poised to be an RMB hub for Africa. I would respond in the affirmative, but I would probably be cautiously affirmative, and I'll explain why the words of caution later on. But I think there are, in my mind, three factors which could drive this ambition of Mauritius to become an RMB hub for Africa. And I think when I talk about the three factors, you would know that these factors probably would have been looked at some point by my predecessors. So I'm not going to dwell on it, but I think from a holistic perspective, I see three main drivers. Number one, certainly the growth in the China-Africa bilateral investment and trade corridor. So there's a lot happening. We can talk a little bit more about that, although there has been statistics that have been given early on. The second driver is, in my view, the increase in the use of renminbi by corporates. Obviously, I hear Mathieu that there needs to be more push towards internationalization and globalization of renminbi. But already, if you look at corporates, you see that there has been a steady increase in the use of renminbi by corporates, and we'll be able to have a look at why that is so in a moment. And obviously, last but not least, I think the third driver is the unique position of Mauritius as a recognized international financial center, perched on the axis of the China-Africa corridor. And I think it's a combination of these three drivers that create the opportunity, because the opportunity there certainly is. Growth in the China-Africa bilateral investment and trade, I think you look at the statistics and you see it for yourself. There has been a steady growth for the past, 15, 16 years now in trade between China and Africa. And I think, and most of the economists as well think the same way, that this is poised to continue to grow, as obviously China sees Africa not only as China also now sees Africa as having a great potential, with essentially 900 million potential customers in a moving market. That's on one side. On the other side, Africa, of course, continues to need key investment in infrastructure, mainly roads, railways, ports, hydroelectric dams, refineries, and you name it. So clearly, I think to answer your question, Mathieu, the trade volumes are bound to increase over the years. And this is what would drive also the interest for the use of the renminbi. And on that point, what we have seen is as the China's economy grows and becomes more integrated with the rest of the world, the renminbi as well is going to be more widely used internationally. And obviously that will create demand for the currency. And therefore, we have already started to see, especially if we look at commerce, and Governor mentioned it in his statement, that the use of renminbi by corporates has been steadily increasing. And this is driven by a few things, Chairman. Obviously, the opportunities to reach a larger supplier and customer base in China, particularly those who prefer to settle transactions in renminbi. Improvements in price transparency, as Chinese counterparts do not need to provide exchange or hedging costs in their pricing. A shortened settlement cycle, which is also very important. Obviously, a shortened settlement cycle allows businesses to be done more efficiently and thereby reduces transaction costs. And last but not least, the enhanced access to financing and investment opportunities in renminbi. So that is what I think is going to continue to create more emphasis in the use of renminbi by corporates. And just to sort of tie it up, so obviously we have the growth in transaction volumes between Africa and China, the increase in the use of renminbi. So where does that put us? Now, we, as I said, are ideally placed between China and Africa. Many before me have talked about Mauritius being largely recognized already as an international financial center for Africa. I don't really like the term gateway. I'd rather use the proper terminology. And I think Mauritius is ideally positioned to take advantage of this trade volume. Why Mauritius? Because, and that's where I said I would be cautiously optimistic. I think you mentioned it yourself, Mathieu as well. We have a lot of competitors. We should not think that there is no competition in that space. Hong Kong has been mentioned rightly so, but there are also a lot of other RMB hubs. Closer to us, South Africa is an existing RMB hub, and so is Zambia, probably because of the mining. But I think Mauritius has a unique ecosystem which allows us to certainly beat the competitions that are probably closer to home. Why Mauritius? I think, well, certainly we already have a good reputation in facilitating cross-border investment between China and Africa. Well-regulated, of course. Obviously, I have to say that Chairman of the FSC is on the panel. That's a joke. But very well-regulated, good reputation, good skills, a very diverse ecosystem with a lot of the components that make the financial ecosystem sustainable: banks, other financial institutions, management companies, accounting firms, and so on and so forth. And certainly the fact that we now have the FTA, but let us not forget that we also have a lot of regional trade agreements, preferential market agreements. We are a member of a number of African groupings, the African Union, the SADC, the COMESA. I think the combination of all these factors taken together put us in a unique position to be what I would probably call a sort of a regional RMB hub, at least for that region. And I think that the opportunity is there for the taking.
Thank you, Assad. One more question to you. Taking into consideration that Mauritius becomes a Renminbi hub, will this expand the range of financial products and services denominated in Renminbi? And will this also give access to financing and investment opportunities in Renminbi?
To answer your question, I think let's look at a typical scenario, right? Which then will make us understand more what would be the granular opportunities that would arise from Mauritius being a regional RMB hub. Certainly, if Mauritius becomes a regional RMB hub, it will make the use of renminbi in Africa-China trade, commerce, and investment easier for Mauritian financial institutions and their customers, right? And so obviously, there is a whole ecosystem that would be required in order to provide international clients with the type of financial products and instruments that would be the necessary enablers to being an RMB hub. And here, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. We just need to have a look at Hong Kong. It's a good example. And if you look at Hong Kong, for example, and you look at the diversity of renminbi product and services offered in Hong Kong, it will already give you an indication as to what would be the type of products and instruments that could be offered. I mean, you look at retail and corporate banking, for example, obviously deposit accounts, conventional and structured deposits, currency exchange, checks, debit, credit card, remittance, financing, trade financing, and a lot of other kinds of loans and advances, wealth management products, treasury management services, but also more sophisticated products, for example, in the capital markets, such as debt origination, investment funds, REITs, commodity-linked products, exchange-traded funds, EFTs, equity financing, forex products. Why not insurance, renminbi insurance? Trade settlement, of course, and a lot has been said already, and I know there's a panel on trade settlement, so I'm not going to talk much about trade settlement. But there's probably one thing which actually I found to be quite interesting when I was doing my research for this panel, is renminbi financing. For example, if you look at Hong Kong, the first renminbi bond was issued in Hong Kong in 2007. And the renminbi bond market in Hong Kong, or the dim sum market, as it is commonly called, has since developed steadily and is now the largest outside of mainland China. So why not a Mauritian-based renminbi bond to steer up the development of this regional hub? So I think to conclude, I'd simply like to say that in my humble view, a Mauritius-based RMB hub will certainly expand the range of financial products and services denominated in the Chinese currency and pave the way for a deepening of our offering and would go well in line with increasing substance for the Mauritian jurisdiction. I hope that has answered your question.
Sure. Thank you so much, Assad. I'm going now to move to Mr. Lianhong. So the question for you is, in recent years, the economic and trade cooperation between China and Africa has witnessed good momentum. So with the rapid growth of trade between China and Africa, has there been an increase in the proportion of renminbi settlement in Africa?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Glad to see everyone here. I'm from Bank of China. For this question, I would say certainly, with the rapid growth of trade between China and Mauritius, the renminbi settlement will be increased. China has been Africa's largest trading partner for the past 10 years. And the trade volume has been increased year and year. With rapid growth of trade between China and Mauritius, the proportion of renminbi settlement, of course, will increase year and year. And also, the internationalization of renminbi has made considerable progress in Africa. But I think there's still room, there's still space to grow compared with the total trade volume between China and Africa. And also, as just mentioned, renminbi has attracted increasing attention from African countries in recent years because of its advantages in promoting trade and investment between China and Africa, and preventing exchange rate risks, and in the meanwhile, securing the financial system. And the second point I want to say is that the financial cooperation between China and Africa has also strengthened in recent years. A lot of Chinese financial institutions have set up subsidiaries or branch in many African countries. For example, Bank of China now have 5 subsidiaries and 3 representative offices in Africa. And also, South Africa and many other African countries have included the renminbi in their foreign exchange reserve. And China has formed a renminbi clearing agreement with Zambia and signed currency swap agreement with many other African countries. And industry insiders side, combining investment in Africa with renminbi internationalization and boosting China-Africa financial cooperation will make African countries and institutions more willing to use the renminbi. Over time, I believe yuan will become a reserve and a settlement currency in more African countries. And the third point I want to say is that new regulations and frameworks introduced by various Chinese agencies provide greater impetus to renminbi internationalization, such as the introduction of new free trade zones, expansion of One Belt and One Road, and the inclusion of China Asia into the MCCI index. All these key elements will contribute to the increased use of the renminbi globally. And the African continent FTA, free trade area, which also entered into effect at the same day from FTA between China and Mauritius, and also provide an opportunity for yuan internationalization. China and Africa are expected to build more closer economic and trade cooperation through the African continent FTA and the One Belt One Road program, which will integrate China's development experiences, capital, technology with Africa's rich natural and human resource. So it will boosting the use of renminbi in Africa. This agreement can make the trade rulers simpler, the exchange of goods and services between the two sides simpler. So thereby enable the renminbi to more widely used. I also want to further highlight that the use of renminbi in international transaction increased in the last year despite some trade friction and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, according to the latest annual survey on renminbi internationalization, jointly conducted by the Chinese banks and also some international research groups. So renminbi is proved to be very stable and very robust and resilient under the adverse and uncertain economic situation in 2020. And in 2021, it is expected to see the introduction of more internationalization measures to support and strengthen the renminbi currency. Thank you.
One more question to you. From your bank's perspective, you're a bank that comes from China here. How do you think can you help us in our renminbi journey?
Okay. For the Bank of China Mauritius, I want to say the first thing is it's the only Chinese-funded financial institution based in Mauritius. And it's our pleasure and also our responsibility to support Mauritius on the renminbi journey together with other financial institutions. So we can think about this question from the central bank perspective. From the central bank perspective, the key factor to become a renminbi settlement hub may be the market size and the trade volume of renminbi. So the question transferred to how to increase the market size. The FTA between China and Mauritius gave us the opportunity to increase the market size. With the introduction of FTA between the two sides, between the two countries, it is expected the renminbi trade volume will be increased both at the export and import side. It's very clear. It's very clear. But at the same time, we should remember Mauritius is one of the first African financial centers, and its global competitiveness ranking is among top 5 in Africa. We all know Mauritius have very strong potential and competitive advantages in many areas compared with other African countries, such as low taxes, no control of capital, strategic location, robust regulatory, and security, political stability, and as well as extensive bilateral and multilateral relationships across the African continent. So there are so many advantages that I think not everyone knows this. But for Bank of China Mauritius, we should strengthen communication with the branches inside the China and introduce these advantages to Chinese companies. These companies want to do business or invest in Africa, and attracting them to set up regional head office in Mauritius. And Bank of China Mauritius will also provide all these Chinese companies with their required renminbi services to support their expansion, both locally in Mauritius and regionally in Africa. So I think the more Chinese companies set up regional head office in Mauritius, the more renminbi trade volume and market size will increase. And also, for Bank of China, we have the ability, the experiences, and also the necessary infrastructure to act as a local renminbi clearing agent. Bank of China can process the settlement of account, remittance, foreign exchange, and also renminbi liquidity support, and also other renminbi services. So by making easier to trade with counterparties in the Chinese mainland, Bank of China can help improve the economic and trade partnership to promote development between China and Mauritius, and also between Mauritius and Africa. And also, I think we should introduce non-financial products and services denominated in renminbi to increase the local market size. The Chinese currency, yuan, is one of the most attractive currencies among the major economies during the 2020, supported by the domestic economic growth. China is the world's second largest economy with a very stable outlook at GDP growth. So this provides valuable potential in investment and trade partnership. We have seen an increase in investment in China's bonds. The panda bonds and the renminbi denominated offshore bond called dim sum bonds are extremely popular financial products for international investors. The renminbi qualified foreign institutional investor program is a policy initiative by the Chinese government to allow foreign investors to invest directly in Chinese bond and equity market. So a lot of things we can do to support the Mauritius on the journey, on the renminbi journey. So I hope Bank of China, together with all the other financial institutions here, to do this thing, to finish our historical task. Sure. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Lianhong. Now, before I invite questions, I ask my fellow panelists whether you have anything more to say.
Thank you, Chair.
So the floor is open now for questions.
We were very clear.
It seems that we have been very clear in our
everyone is hungry.
So if you have no questions, I thank you, all of you. I think we have done what we could to explain to you the importance of the renminbi. So I would say thank you and have a very good lunch and afternoon. Thank you so much.
It was very good what you did, actually.
Yerukunondu and all the panelists for the thought-provoking questions and discussions. Ladies and gentlemen,